What is going on, guys? It's that time of the year, so as you see, the big Christmas tree is going to be up here, and Marion was talking to me and said that I should do a recommendation or no a wish list video to where I talk about some suggestions for people to get for Christmas. Buying for Christmas is not the easiest of things, so I'm going to be doing some board games, some video games, casual gamers, experienced gamers, and then old games like before this year, new games that are exclusively for this year, and then recommendations for children and elders because while they might want to play games, some games are a little bit too out of their ballpark. I even played some games that I would consider pretty easy, but they just missed with my grandma. So I am going to give some ones that I think would be good for people of all ages, for younger ages and older ages. So we're starting off with the casual board gamer. And so the older recommendation I'm going to go with is A Fake Artist Goes to New York. It comes in the small box, and then I've also seen it at Target when a larger box, probably about double the size. So it is a party game that goes 5 to 10 people. I would say it's best with the higher player count. You have one person who is the game master, the GM, and they pick a word and they write it on however many players there are. They write it on these little dry erase things. So let's say, for example, I say turkey. I'm going to write it on all except one. And for that last one, they just write with this dry erase marker, they just write an X. And that person is the fake artist. And what they're trying to do is figure out what the word is. And this whole game is done through drawing. So you do 2 rounds. You take the sheet of paper and you draw. I'm not going to draw, but you draw without picking your pen up. It's like one single line. And what you're trying to do is make that object. But the fake artist is trying to figure out what that object is. So what they're trying to do, you'll go 2 rounds. You are trying to accuse, as the artist, you're trying to accuse, or you're trying to suss out who is the fake artist. And if they're wrong, the artist and the GM win. The GM is technically on the same team as the fake artist. And if they're correct, the fake artist can still win if they correctly guess what the word is. So it just has a really fun mix of things. I played this a lot whenever I was a volunteer with middle schoolers and high schoolers, and whenever we would play this pretty frequently. But it's a super fun game, great with all ages. A good pickup for casual gamers, and a great one to gift them because look at this box, it's so small. So now I want to talk about a casual game from this year. This one is really special to me and Marianne because it's based on a video game that we like. I talk about this game pretty often, but this is Wilmot's Warehouse. Of all things, it is a cooperative memory game. Now, that sounds really, really off-putting, but what it does is quite fascinating. There are a bunch of objects, just like in the game, in a bag that is Wilmot. You're placing these objects down, and you're trying to remember what they are. And you're making stories, you are just telling how things go, and it really isn't a difficult game, but it just is really surprising that you can remember what objects are. I think I went and played it 3 times in a week, and I got I and the people that we were playing with got 5 incorrect out of 35 per game. So the success rate was super high. And so I was just really having a good time with it. I think a lot of casual gamers will like it. And so that's why I'm recommending Wilmot's Warehouse. So now we get on to the gamer recommendations. And I wanted to give some pretty strategic games that you're not going to be able to play with mom and dad very often. Sometimes you have pretty strategic parents, but a lot of times they might not be gamers. So for this one, I'm going with Pax Renaissance. It did just get a second edition, which it's up here. Pax Renaissance is one of my most played games of this year, and I've been playing it a lot just for a long time since I've been gaming, and it is quite a difficult game to parse. I've had games that last 20 minutes, but sometimes the teaches, if you're teaching first-time gamers, it takes an hour. The second edition is much more is easier to get. It includes the expansion. It has some balance changes, but it's just very strategic as you're planning things. It's a game where the better player will win. The better player will be able to parse the market better. They're going to just play in ways that you can't, that a new player cannot parse. Me returning to the game this year, after a long hiatus of playing it, I went 10 or 15 games without winning. And then once I got back to it, I was like, oh, it's clicking. And all it is building a tableau. You're running trade ops to get more economy, but that may influence things on both sides with all the players. So it's just very fascinating. It's quite deep. It's always different games based on the board state and how the deck shakes out, because not all decks are going to be the same. You do not include certain games or certain cards or certain number of cards. I'm really glad I got to play it again as much as I did this year, and it's for certain a game that I would recommend for you to look for Christmas. And now we move on to the gamer's game for this year, as in a 2024 recommendation. Most board gamers have heard about this game because it came out with a lot of buzz. It came out from a pretty well-known designer, Cole Wehrle. He did the game Root, and he's done John Company, Pax Pamir. So he's well known, and so Arcs keeps the same art style as Root. And Arcs is very interesting because it uses trick-taking as its action selection, but I wouldn't call it a trick-taking game. I was on Dad's on a Map to talk about it as a trick-taker, and it definitely isn't. It is like the sci-fi space opera style game, but in a condensed way. It has a campaign expansion that I have played. Oh my gosh, I think I'm up to 4 campaigns, and I played one campaign across an entire day, and it only took us 9 hours to play 3 sessions of the campaign. And even in the base game, it tells a really cool story. You're playing in a way that scores you points. The campaign is really interesting. It depends on what you are looking for in a game. If it's 2-player, I would recommend just the base game. But yeah, it's definitely one to put on your Christmas list because it's quite good. And if you understand trick taking, you're going to get the ideas of the game. And I think it does so in a great way, and is a really, really good package for what you get. So now you're probably thinking, what about the kids? My viewers, I have a good number of viewers who are my nieces and nephews, and they're all, under the age of 8 or 9, so it's really good for them to game, and I game with them quite often, and so I want to be able to give other parents a recommendation for a board game to play with their kids. So, my recommendation for the kids is a game called Coconuts. It's a dexterity game, and all you do is you have these monkeys, and they put a little coconut in their hand. You point down, and they throw the coconut, and they're trying to get it into these cups. And it's for adults even. It's a fun game, but I've had success with kids, including I had my 2-year-old nephew. All he was doing was just flicking a coconut with his monkey, and that's just fun. And all ages from him all the way up to the 8-year-old were having a good time, and coconuts is definitely a surefire recommendation for kids. And now I wanted to give a recommendation for maybe grandparents, maybe elders, people above a certain age, because sometimes they may not think as sharp as they want. They may be a little slower when it comes to learning rules for the game. And so I went with a game called Lacuna, which is, odd enough, a game in a tube. It's a very simple game because all you're doing is placing a piece in between two of the same color piece, and whoever gets the majority of the most colors will win. And it's very fascinating. It's super simple. I was able to play with my mom, and we played through a game, and she was like, that's it? Like, in terms of the rules, but she felt like it was like a meaty game. You get a lot out of just pieces and putting something in between it. The game only takes like 15 minutes, so it's definitely one that I would recommend to elderly people. Lacuna. And now we're going to feature the video game recommendation. I decided, instead of me just talking like this, I am going to have the trailer showing and talking it over it. For the board games, I kind of went off script and just kind of talked from my heart, whereas the video game recommendations, I had those scripted. You're going to be able to tell a little bit of the difference between the vocals. It's something that I just am better at whenever I have a script. But I do like to be able to practice without a script. So thank you for understanding and enjoy these video game recommendations. Lil Gator Game is great for casual gamers for a few reasons. The game is very chill, which fits with the theme. You play as a little brother being a hero with his friends. Enemies are just cardboard cutouts that they made. There is no character death or even damage for that matter. It really is just kids being kids. Being a 3D platformer, many casual games will feel nostalgia for when they played much of the N64. Their Steam page says a no-pressure adventure game. Lil Gator Game focuses on adventure and play. Don't let a health bar hold you back from reaching your goal. And I don't think there is a better way to describe why I recommend Lil Gator Game. While Papers, Please is a great game, Lil Guardsman is where I would point casual gamers. It takes the gameplay and thematic ideas of running Border Gate and makes it lighter on the connections to real life, easier to get into, and meshes it with really good voice acting and animation. You feel like you're a part of a cartoon series. It has branching paths and you can experience them all using part of the gameplay. And overall, it is a good time where you get invested in the character arcs. Recommending 2 games with Lil in their titles was not intended on my part. For those who don't know much about Tunic, it's easy to be dissuaded by the appearance. You see a cute fox, so it has to be a fairly simple game. I can attest, Tunic is much more than what it shows. A good part of it peels back as you find the in-game manual. I grew up reading manuals for games endlessly, but it's incorporated into the actual gameplay, revealing to you knowledge that you can use from the start of the game, which is genius. Solving one of the post-game puzzles is one of my most rewarding moments in gaming of all time. This is what to expect instead of setting your expectations low. Years ago, I borrowed the original Dark Souls, played for about an hour, and returned it to the person. The difficulty was just too much. The ideas of learning attack patterns of basic enemies and dying long before the boss caused me to bounce off of it. As it gave birth to a genre, I kept my distance. I decided to give it a shot because I trusted Aggro Crab. Their first game, Going Under, was so cool, and I wanted to try out a game focused on their namesake. Other than trust in the developers, I was drawn to the theme and aesthetics. Putting things under the ocean while dedicating the story to real-life problems like repossessions, class separation, independence, and self-worth makes for a welcoming experience. The idea is that your weapon isn't interchangeable, but your shell is, and it is what gives you your special abilities. The combat, theme, story, and visuals all mesh to make an incredible package.
I'm here to investigate a case.
I was able to beat this game on stream this year. My brother-in-law and his kids were watching, but they were able to follow along with the stories and give inputs to the mystery of the salami bandit. What makes this great for kids is it is incredibly affordable. $10 is for a lot of fun. The voice acting is incredibly good. It runs for about 2 to 3 hours, so it acts as a fun interactive movie where the kids are working out the problems instead of having the film tell you what you need to know. Now, Balatro isn't a game you would think of for your grandparents to play, and it isn't one that I would sit down to let them explore on their own. I thought of this knowing that my grandfather sits at home playing euchre against the CPU on his tablet while watching TV. The game is addictive on its own for quite experienced gamers, but it has a few items that are great for the majority of people. First of all, the game uses a traditional 52 card deck. You are the one that makes the changes to it. Second, the basis of it is around poker. Now, there are people out there that only know the term Full House of being the 90s sitcom, but there's still a lot of understanding that the masses have of poker. Finally, the game is easy to play. You move cards around, discard the ones you don't want to use, modify a couple, and then play them in a poker hand. I'm tempted with trying out the game for my grandfather for this Christmas.